subscribe to our videos so that more people can hear the Word of God.
Good morning and welcome to 5 Minutes a Day with God, and welcome to Wednesday. And today we're just going to look at John 13, 4 and 5, and Jesus washing his disciples' feet. So this is something we're going to look at for a couple of days because we're just going to really break it up and just look into the deeper meaning of it. But let's read verses 4 and 5. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. All right, let's look at what this means, right? To us, maybe in our modern day, we're like, okay, that's nice. Jesus was washing his disciples' feet, but there's a lot here. And so first what I want to look at is how descriptive that was, right? It says he poured water, he wrapped a towel, he put it around his waist. These are very specific details. And so by writing these specific details, the author John wants us to know that this is an important event. This is something that is embedded in his brain, in his mind, in his spirit. So can you remember, I think about like remembering a time that it was really important to you, right? You remember those details, right? Maybe it was your wedding day and you remember exactly the way your dad looked or your groom looked or your bride looked, right? You remember exactly the way your friends smiled at you or your mom cried, right? Those are details that come to us from important days. And so this was an important event, and so John wanted us to have those details recorded. So that's just something to, as you notice the details, you go, wow, this was an important thing that John wanted us to pay attention to. Okay, so then this is what's interesting about this is they had already eaten. Okay, so usually when you get your feet washed is when you first come into the room, when you first come into someone's house. So remember, it was just Jesus and his 12 that were in this upper room. And so maybe they didn't have a servant there to do this job. So it's usually a servant's job. So if you go to someone's house and they had servants, it would be maybe a servant who had the worst job, and that would be their job. Is you walk in, you would sit down maybe, and they would wash your feet because they wore sandals. And so they're off into the desert walking around. Their feet were probably smelly, dirty, maybe caked with mud, caked with donkey dung, right? And so what's interesting to me is that because Jesus had to do this, like after the meal, that they were sitting around, right, as they ate. They didn't have tables and chairs like we did. It was more like kind of a flat couch, and so they were reclining. So they had each other's dirty feet right in each other's faces, right? But there was none of them had volunteered to do this job because this job was so dirty. It was considered the lowest servant's job. So none of the 12 thought that this is a job that they would want to do, right? No one volunteered to do this job. And so all of them probably thought it was beneath them. Thought, well, there's no servant to do it. I guess we're just all going to have dirty, smelly feet during dinner, right? And so for Jesus, so it was kind of a rebuke in a way because no one had done this. So Jesus is like, okay, I will do it, right? I'm going to serve you this way. And their first response was shock, right? They're thinking, no, Jesus, don't, what are you doing? You're the rabbi. You're the top of the food chain of the 12 of us, right? Why are you doing this lowly thing, this lowly job for us? And so think of like the shock that they had. And so this is an example that we have. Again, this is the evening before Jesus goes to the cross. Jesus knows that. He knows that soon he's going to be experiencing a horrific agony and pain. And I just want you to think about that for a moment. Think about like if you have a really hard thing going on the next day. most of us are not thinking about serving others, right? Think about that. You have a hard, like if you have a hard test at school, or you have a hard presentation at work, or maybe something difficult with your family, you're not thinking, who can I bless tonight before my hard day tomorrow, right? Most of us think inward. We think self. We think, how am I going to pamper myself because I have this really hard day tomorrow? Maybe I'm going to take a me day and pamper myself and eat delicious food and eat my favorite food, or get a chocolate cake on my way home or whatever, because it's going to be hard tomorrow, right? That's our mentality, but that's not Jesus. Jesus gave us an example that before he was going to do something really hard, he served others. So I just want you to think about that. Think about that. This is an example of an extreme servanthood. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that and what it means to serve others. But in your mind, in your life, what is an act that would be equivalent to this, right, of washing someone's feet? So for me, one of the first things that I thought of is right now I am working as a hospice chaplain. And so one of the really difficult jobs, the hard jobs for family members, or at the end of a family member's life, they are just in a bed, right? They're not ambulatory. They can't walk into the bathroom and be able to alleviate themselves that way. And so the family members are changing their diapers, and that's a really hard thing to do, to do this act for their family, but they do it out of love. And I remember one of my patient's daughters who was by herself, her family came in to help, but she said to me, well, they won't change the diapers, so I still have to do that by myself. That's something they refuse to do. And I think in this example, that to them, like, it's an extreme servant heart, right? To love their family member in this way that's difficult. And so maybe you have your own idea of what washing feet looks like for someone. All right. Have a good day, and we'll see you tomorrow. And remember, 5 minutes in the Word can change your life.